Good morning. Welcome to worship with the community of the First Unitarian Church of Omaha. I'm the Reverend Shari Woodbury, the church's minister. Whether you're attending online or in person, I'm glad you have decided to join us on this beautiful fall morning. We come together to worship, which from the Latin means to remember that which is of worth. We gather together in community each week to reground ourselves in our highest values. A special welcome to visitors. This congregation is a community of all ages and abilities. It is a community with a rainbow of gender and sexual identities. It is a community of diverse cultural and class backgrounds. We draw from many sources of inspiration and share common liberal religious values. Whoever you may be, we welcome you to bring your whole self into this space. We also love being an intergenerational community. Children are welcome to remain in the sanctuary throughout the service, or they can go to religious education classes after the story for all ages for those in elementary, middle, and high school. Or there's also a nursery downstairs in the basement. If you're joining us online, I encourage you to create a YouTube account and sign in when you attend that way so that you can participate in the comments, including joys and concerns. If you're here in person, afterwards, we will have coffee and conversation downstairs in the common room, out the doors and down those stairs or down and around this way. Meanwhile, if you are logged into church Wi-Fi and don't need to be, please do put your phone on airplane mode during the service. Lastly, each week we acknowledge that where we meet for worship as the First Unitarian Church of Omaha is the land of the Omaha Oto Nations, and that Indigenous people in the greater community have become marginalized and made invisible. We recognize their presence and aspire to work with them to resolve issues like poverty, displaced children, and the murdered and missing Indigenous women, the MMIW. We hear now Prelude on two traditional hymns. This morning, Peter, Danny, and Julian Solfest will light the flaming chalice. As they come forward, you can open up your gray hymnal to the inside front cover where you'll find our chalice lighting words. I understand Julian is 4 months old. All together. Spark of the Spirit, cupped in earth's embrace, light of love, alive in all creation. As we kindle this flame, we rekindle our connection to the sacred web of life. Thank you. In the darkening days of the year, as the seasons turn, let us honor all that we are and all for which we yearn. Beneath the eclipse, in this age of gestating change, let us imagine a great presence stirring within us and beside us. As we settle into the sanctuary of something larger, let us allow our questions to rise up. Potent and alive, may our questions be our companions as we journey along the way of not knowing. I invite you to rise for our opening hymn, number 318, We Would Be One. You might want to sing in a spirit of all connection with all people, including solidarity with those in Ukraine and other nations facing aggressors, and with hope for unity and collaboration across differences in our own country as we look ahead to a divided government. Number 318, We Would Be One.
Our hymn of love.
seated. And the children may come forward now for a time for all ages with Dan Sullivan. I think he's going to get a little help from Lynn Thompson. And Dan has brought some of his puppets today. So let's see what he's got for us.
I love your organ.
Okay. May I go while you're here? Good morning, children. This is a story about waiting. Sometimes waiting is very difficult. For this morning, two characters will speak. One is a turkey named Tommy, and he's ready for something to happen this week. And the other is a little pig named Piggy. Yes?
Is it near Thanksgiving for the turkey, so he's like scared?
Well, the turkey is a little concerned, but he's hoping to head for the hills before that. The pig's going to take care of him. So,
Tommy, I have a surprise for you.
oh, what is it?
It's a surprise.
Is it big?
Yes.
Is it pretty?
Oh, yes.
Can we share it?
Yes, we can.
I can't wait.
You will have to wait
What? Why?
because it's not here yet.
So I will have to wait for it?
Yes.
Oh, well, if I have to wait, I have to wait.
Oh, that's...
Waiting is not easy.
I'm sorry, we will just have to keep waiting.
Oh, Piggy, I want to see the surprise now. I'm done waiting. I don't think your surprise is worth waiting for. I do not want to wait for it.
You must.
Okay, I'll wait some more.
It will be worth it.
Piggy, why do we have to wait so long? It's getting dark. It's getting darker. Pretty soon, we won't be able to see each other. Soon, we won't be able to see anything. We have waited too long.
Well,
We have waited and waited and waited. For what?
the
Oh,
stars.
stars. Oh, they're so beautiful. Look, there's a shooting star. I'm so glad we waited.
I thought you would be.
Later, yeah.
Did the turkey make a wish on the shooting star?
You'd think so, wouldn't you? Tomorrow morning, I want to show you the sunrise.
I can hardly wait.
Well, so you see, boys and girls, sometimes it's difficult to wait. But many of the things that are worth waiting for, we have to wait for. And so we wait and try to be patient. Thank you. You may go to your class now.
that was fun. Each week, we practice the spiritual virtue of generosity by taking up a community offering. Half of the loose currency in the offering plate here in the sanctuary is donated to a local cause which resonates with UU principles. Those on YouTube may choose to donate directly to the organization online, and the link was provided with service information. Our Share the Plate recipient for November is Omaha Alternatives to Violence Project. You can hear a lot more about them next week if you come to the service then. Omaha Alternatives to Violence, or AVP, offers guidance, support, and workshops based on the belief there is a power that is able to transform violent and destructive situations and behaviors into liberating and constructive experiences and cooperative behavior. Using the AVP curriculum, participants practice ways for changing opponents into friends and bringing justice out of injustice. For now, I invite you to make a donation to this organization, and I hope you'll come and hear more about them next week as we hear a gift of music on the organ. We come to the time for sharing of joys and concerns. When you feel comfortable sharing your joys, that's a real gift to others as the joys are multiplied in the sharing. And when you're comfortable sharing your concerns, this community can offer its care. If you're online, you can put an item in the comment area right now and we'll lift it up. I've got a couple of items to share here. Today is Transgender Day of Remembrance, a day set aside each year to acknowledge the inherent worth of the people lost to anti-trans violence in the past year. For simply being themselves, 32 transgender people in the U.S. were killed in hate crimes in the past year. That's 32 that we know of. 12 of them in the Midwest, most of them Black or brown trans women. In a collaboration with Second Unitarian Church, we are hosting a special service tonight to remember and name the lives lost. That'll be at 6 p.m. You can attend in person here in the sanctuary or via YouTube if you'd like to help give witness to these trans victims. I also want to invite us all to share our thoughts and good wishes to our wonderful pianist, Jay Goff, who will be going to Iowa City for eye surgery this Wednesday. Sending good vibes for healing as he recovers from that procedure. Nothing online? Okay. I invite you to join me in our centering song, number 1034 in the Teal Hymnal, De Noche. We'll do it once in Spanish and then once in English. On the wings of this music, let us enter a time of centering together. As we continue our discipleship in the way of not knowing, in this final service in our fall worship series, I want to share with you another poem from Rainer Maria Rilke. It's titled, Try to Love the Questions Themselves, and this translation is from Joni Mitchell. We'll share the poem now in the spirit of a prayer. And in the silence after Rilke's words, I invite you to notice if any particular word or phrase or image from the poem shimmers and stays with you. You'll hear it twice before the silence.
Have patience with everything unresolved in your heart, and try to love the questions themselves as if they were locked rooms or books written in a very foreign language. Don't search for the answers, which could not be given to you now, because you would not be able to live them. And the point is to live everything. Live the questions now. Perhaps then, someday far in the future, you will gradually, without even noticing it, live your way into the answer.
Have patience with everything unresolved in your heart, and try to love the questions themselves, as they are locked rooms or books written in a very foreign language. Don't search for the answers, which cannot be given to you now, because you would not be able to live them. And the point is to live everything. Live the questions now. Perhaps then, someday far in the future, you will gradually, without even noticing it, live your way into the answers.
Let's hold a prayerful silence, and you might just notice if any phrase or image shimmers or stays with you from that piece. We began the fall worship series on the way of not knowing 3 weeks ago. At that time, I lifted up 2 practices that can help us when we are beneath an eclipse. One of those protective practices is to embrace the not knowing, not needing to know how the future will unfold, trusting that the wait will be worth it, even though waiting is hard for many of us. And also, in our embrace of all that we don't know, perhaps even letting go of things we thought we knew, which might turn out not to be so. We dove deeper into the discipline of unlearning in the second service in the series. The other protective practice I lifted up at the beginning of the series is leaning into each other, building relationships with one another, one-to-one, building communities of people that can offer one another mutual care and support through whatever the future may bring. A church community like this one is all about that. And we can build such relationships in other areas of our lives too, in our extended families and friendship groups, in our neighborhoods and co-ops and local business networks. So embracing the openness of the future, which will likely be quite different from the present, with all of the waiting and mystery that this posture of openness invites us into, and building networks of mutual care and support. These are foundational practices for an eclipse age. This morning, I'd like to share 4 more tools or ways of surviving and thriving through this time. The first is nurturing your own inner well-being and resilience. Change is hard. Not knowing is hard. Waiting is hard. Being creative and open takes energy. So even more than before, we need to take care of ourselves. I suspect for many of us, this may in part mean doing less, fewer to-dos to check off of our lists, fewer things to accomplish, more self-care and being with loved ones and just being, rest and play and spaciousness. These are the kinds of things that help people metabolize change, of which we've already had so much, as well as helping us tap into the well springs of creativity and resourcefulness within us. Before I go to the second tool or way I want to lift up today, I want to invite you to choose an image that speaks to you. You may have noticed the table here up front that has a bunch of cards with different images on them. If you are participating from home, You'll see several images with the camera that Oliver, I invite you to choose an image that might be nearby that is meaningful to you. And it might be something you haven't really looked at before. It could be a family picture. It could be on the front cover of a book. And choose something that connects with you and just trust your instincts. For those in the sanctuary, in a few moments I'll invite you to come forward to the tables here, glance through the images, and choose one that feels potent to you. There are a mix of tarot cards and soul cards, rich artistic images. You don't have to look at them all before you choose one. If you see one you like, you can just take it and then go back to your seat with it. Now, if you don't like having to choose, you can ask me, or a Peg will also be here to choose one for you, and we'll hand you a card. And we're going to start from the middle this time. So let's see, where Jack Heidel is and where Linda Hess is, we'll have you all be the first row to come up. And you'll come down the middle aisle. You can circle any which way around the table you want. There's cards facing you from every side. Choose one and then come back out the aisle by the piano and back to your seat. As that row has come, then the next ones before come until we've come all the way up. And then when the choir has gone, we'll go back to the back and start with Suzanne and John and the other folks at the very back there until we get back up to the middle again. You follow that? Okay. Okay, and one other thing. So as we do this, anyone who's so moved may hum. We're not going to hum a melody. Just choose a tone and feel that pitch resonating in your body. Notice how it connects with what others around you are humming, if they choose to hum. I'm going to actually invite the choir to start this first, our basses and tenors, and then the higher voices can come in. You can occasionally change pitch if you want. Just let it resonate in your belly, in your throat, in your head, a nice and buzzy sound. You can take a breath whenever you need to and then just come back in. So there's no right or wrong to this. We're just feeling the vibration in our bodies. Okay, so can our low voices in the choir start the humming for us? And you can start coming up from the middle. Anyone else join in the humming when you feel moved to do so? All right, now in silence, I invite you to sit with your image for a bit, whatever card you chose or whatever image you found at home, and just gaze at it gently. Notice how it connects with you. Is your eye drawn to any particular part of the image, a symbol, a color, a shape? How does the image make you feel? Does it draw up any associations for you? Do you notice any response in your body as you continue to take in this image? Let's continue communing with our cards in silence. This brings us to the second of 4 tools or ways I lift up this morning, and that is accessing the knowing of our bodies and our right brains. Our contemporary Western culture tends to place a high value on rational knowledge, the left side, the head. And there's a lot to be gained by using those abilities and the learning that comes from logical thinking and the accumulation of scientific and technical knowledge. So this is not to discount that or disvalue that type of knowledge, which is important to us too. But I'm suggesting that when we also develop our awareness of what is happening in our bodies and what our right brains, the creative, holistic way of understanding, what we can access more when we develop that too. We may gain access to some of the unknown knowns named in the ignorance map that we looked at 2 weeks ago. Unknown knowns are things that we know, even though we may not realize how we know them or even that we know them. The gut feeling that tells you to be careful around someone new you just met. Perhaps they are giving off signals that you unconsciously recognize from past experience as cause for caution. The sensation of openness or tightness in your chest as you hear an idea, that can tell you something about how you feel and what you do or don't want. Images, like those used in the oracle cards or these soul cards also mixed in today, they can speak to our intuitive minds, as can images from our own dreams, our nighttime sleeping dreams, as can poetry, and perhaps even more so music, which engages our bodies at an instinctive and connecting level of rhythm and resonance. I believe if we make a point of nurturing our awareness of our bodies and what they're telling us, and hone our right-brained ways of knowing through image, song, story, and metaphor, we can make better decisions about the future, about what we want for ourselves and for those who come after us, and what choices can help create our desired future. The Sanctuary Singers will give us an opportunity to practice this holistic way of knowing now as they share this morning's anthem, Both Sides Now. Before I share the third and fourth tools for living the questions, I invite you to pause, hold the feeling of this music, and look again at your image. And take a few moments to notice, is there anything else that is speaking to you now from this card? Perhaps another side or angle to what it is saying. And the giant painting that hangs on a wall in my home office, an image I look at often, an older person looks at me through wizened eyes. It's a man, but when I look at this painting, I see my future self. When I'm a crone someday with laugh lines and a head of snow white hair. The mixed media painting, made by a member of this church actually, Bob Bosco, it has a number of different colors, textures, implied landscapes behind the dominant figure of my future self. One is the outline of this person when younger, at least that's how I interpret it, taking a literal leap of faith through space. I love this painting because it invites me to make choices today that will please that future self, that I will feel good about when my time left is short. How will you use your precious time? It asks me. And that brings me to the third way of being I want to lift up this morning that can help us navigate the way forward. And that is future consciousness. Future consciousness. A time perspective that brings our future selves and even our ancestors and descendants into our awareness too. This is what futurist Ari Wallach calls a long path perspective. Long path. Wallach actually encourages us to think well beyond our own lives, to have empathy for multiple generations before us, whose choices brought us to this moment and who could never imagine the world that we're living in now, to have empathy for ourselves, doing the best we can in an uncertain present, and especially to have empathy for future generations, our direct descendants, or those touched by our lives, and those touched by their lives, and on as the concentric circles ripple out through humankind and across centuries. Such empathy across generations encourages us to prioritize long-term goals over short-term gains, which is so critical when you live in a society that is obsessed with the short term, as ours is. So I invite you to envision a chain of being that extends many generations before you. Think of the oldest ancestor you can remember knowing, and then imagine a few generations before that. And also many generations after you. Perhaps picture the youngest child in your family, grandchild in your family, and imagine a few generations after that if you can. Each one of us is part of an arc of human development that extends over not just centuries, but millennia. Here we are, early in the third millennium, since Westerners started counting after the death of Jesus. Really, of course, there were numerous millennia before that. Each of us has a role to play in making a better humankind for the next millennium. If we embrace such future consciousness, we can imagine multiple possibilities in the future and then make choices now based on what we want to see happen for those generations far, far down the road. Let's return to the wise words of Rainer Maria Rilke. Peg and Elaine will share it with you again now, just once through, with a bit of silence after. And in that quiet, I invite you to notice how the poem is speaking to your life today.
Try to have patience with everything unresolved in your heart, and try to love the questions themselves.
As if they were locked rooms or books written in a very foreign language.
Don't search for the answers, which could not be given to you now, because you would not be able to live them.
And the point is to live everything.
Live the questions now.
Perhaps then, someday, far in the future,
You will gradually, without even knowing it, live your way into the answer.
Bit of silence to notice how that's speaking to you. And isn't it sweet that one of the youngest generation among us is present with us as we think about future generations? Okay, we come to the fourth and final tool I want to lift up this morning to help us through this uncertain, intertidal, who knows what might happen next time. And that is trust in the process. Trust in the process. What I mean by that is have some faith that we really can create positive futures for the next 7 generations. Little you and me have a great deal of power. Seemingly small choices we make in our daily lives today can have an enormous and positive influence down the line. Not only are humans social creatures, influencing each other in the moment, like flocks of birds who navigate so deftly by cueing off those nearest them. We have our human versions of the bird's murmuration, when small changes catch on quickly and the whole flock can turn in another direction just like that. Not only that, but because we live in a time of particular ferment, the choices we make now are especially primed to have an exponential effect on the future. Perhaps you've heard before the anecdote about inventor Buckminster Fuller, who was commissioned by our Navy during World War II. The Navy wanted Fuller to ensure that even as we built bigger and bigger ships, we didn't lose maneuverability. We needed these big ships to be able to turn quickly. The solution Fuller came up with, called a trim tab, is a piece of metal only 6 inches wide. It's attached to the end of a ship's rudder with a hinge. And implausible as it may sound to the non-engineers among us, this 6 inches of metal on a giant ship leaning into the resistance of the oncoming water at just the right spot beneath the ship, gives the oomph to rotate the Navy ship's great rudder and make a huge boat turn quickly. Well, the ship of human civilization can turn quickly too, especially if we are not alone and using our personal trim tabs. Now, if Navy ships aren't relatable to you, let me share a more human scale example. One of the things I try to do that we might call one of my trim tabs is to resist the depersonalizing effects of our culture with its busyness and automation and greater focus on GDP than individual well-being. One of the ways I do this is by being friendly to people one-to-one. When I'm ready to pay at the grocery store, I often favor checking out with a person instead of at the self-checkouts, which abound everywhere now. I have a habit of smiling at the clerk, asking them how their day is going, and genuinely listening. This often leads to a friendly exchange with the clerk that continues until I'm leaving the checkout. And it's the same when I stop in the bank to make a deposit, or talk to one of the administrative staff at my child's school when I stop in to pick her up for a doctor's appointment. And I hope when I put my free hugs button on, as I do every Sunday, and receive many warm hugs at the door. All these little human touches may seem like small things, but small things make a culture and add up to collective values and life experiences. So that's one of my trim tabs. I can guess at what might be trim tabs for some of you, the little things you do in daily life that help create lifeways that echo down generations. Maybe you grow vegetables in your garden and are teaching younger people how to garden and can and cook. Maybe you learn about how to resolve conflicts in peaceful and effective ways and help others learn through their direct experience with you. Perhaps you are going solar. Perhaps we as a church might go solar as an institution, say on the rooftop of our religious education wing. Nationally, we're at a turning point for that, for scaling up sustainable forms of energy and turning the ship of civilization away from fossil fuels. There's so many trim tabs we are using to leave future humans and other creatures with brighter possibilities. In that last example, I circled back to the foundation of building community. I do think our individual trim tabs make a real difference. And when we come together in a community like this one and influence each other and do things collectively, wow. So let us continue to build on our foundations, embracing the uncertain time we live in with creativity and possibility as great as its risks, and building communities of mutual care. And let us use the 4 tools and ways I have outlined today. If you want to work with these tools in your own life, I invite you to affirm them one by one by responding yes after each question I ask now. Will you nurture your own well-being and resilience? Yes. Will you seek to access the intuitive powers of knowing that reside in your body and your creative, holistic mind? Yes. Will you foster future consciousness and generational empathy in yourself and others? Yes. And will you trust the process of change, remembering that all the little trim tabs of our lives can make all the difference, not only to our own future selves, but for our descendants? Yes. May it be so, and amen. Our closing hymn is number 368, Now Let Us Sing. You may rise if you're ready to stretch, and some of our choir singers will get us started on the bass line. I'm going to stay on the top line, which is the melody, so you can sing whatever part you prefer. And we'll do the 4 verses as they are given in the hymnal: faith, hope, love, and joy. Number 3.
Lift
seated. All ye disciples of the way of not knowing, if you choose to continue that discipleship with me, our worship series on that topic is coming to an end. But living into this way of being is an ongoing process for all who choose it. With this in mind, I invite you to listen to our guiding poem from Rilke one more time. And this time afterward, as I blow out the chalice, you might notice if you experience an invitation in the poem. Is it inviting you to do anything in particular or to be a particular way?
Have patience with everything unresolved in your heart, and try to love the questions themselves.
As if they were in locked rooms or books written in a very foreign language.
Don't search for the answers which could not be given to you now, because you would not be able to live them.
And the point is to live everything.
Live the questions now.
Perhaps then, someday far in the future,
You will gradually, without even noticing it, live your way into the answer.